Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Monday, January 18th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. We have good news and not so good news on the COVID-19 vaccine front today. One batch of the vaccine distributed across the state is on hold after allergic reactions here in San Diego. More on that in a moment, but first, as KPBS health reporter Taryn Mento tells us, people 75 years and older can now make an appointment for their first shot at county-run sites.
San Diego's vaccination super site was staffed up today, but the holiday left more open appointments than expected. UC San Diego Health's Dr. Christopher Longhurst says that prompted county officials to make more people eligible for an injection.
We've done many healthcare workers throughout the county, not all of them, but as we start to see some slack in the schedules, I think it was a great call to say, let's open up and start getting our seniors through as well.
A 12:30 county announcement expanded eligibility to those 75 years or older. A bit more than an hour later, Longhurst says appointments today at Petco Park were filled beyond its daily goal of 5,000.
We have 5,240 scheduled visitors today.
Are you going to be able to do 5,240?
We won't have all 5,240 to immunize because we have some no-shows, and we also unfortunately continue to have folks that work in research labs and other areas that are not yet eligible but have signed up.
The county says it hopes to officially expand to those 65 years and older by the end of the month. Taryn Mento, KPBS News.
The state is putting a hold on one batch of the Moderna vaccine after a small number of people here in San Diego had an allergic reaction. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh has the details.
The state's decision came over the weekend after San Diego County stopped administering a batch of Moderna vaccine after fewer than 10 people developed an allergic reaction at the Petco Park site. Saying they were doing it out of an abundance of caution, the state extended that pause to the entire batch. Some 330,000 doses statewide will be put on hold while the cause is investigated. Dr. Chris Longhurst with UC San Diego Health says people should keep the pause in perspective.
I think that the vaccine has been shown to be very safe, and even those folks that are having some reactions, we're able to manage those, right? Nobody's had long-term impact, and it's still a very small percentage of the folks that we vaccinated.
UC San Diego runs the Petco Park site. They switched out batches and began vaccinating people again within hours.
In the last 7 days, we vaccinated over 25,000 individuals at Petco Park.
State epidemiologist Dr. Erica Pan alerted providers statewide to stop using the particular batch of Moderna vaccine until the CDC, the FDA, and Moderna can complete their investigations. The 330,000 doses are roughly 10% of the 3.2 million doses the state has received overall from Moderna and Pfizer. No other allergic reactions have been reported to the state. At the moment, this is only a pause while the state examines each case and the supply chain. The state is not ordering any vaccine be destroyed. An update is expected later this week. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
We've launched a vaccination dashboard at kpbs.org. It shows the number of local vaccinations compared to the total population. You can also find a list of vaccination centers. Just go to the Tracking COVID-19 section at kpbs.org and then click on Vaccines. The superintendent of the state's second largest school district is being called to Washington by President-elect Joe Biden. KPBS reporter Matt Hoffman has more on San Diego Unified Superintendent Cindy Marten's nomination for Deputy Secretary of Education.
Marten is being tapped to be the second in charge of the U.S. Department of Education. She's been an educator for 3 decades, spending part of her time at Central Elementary in City Heights, later becoming principal there, before being chosen to head one of the country's largest school districts in 2013.
Children who come from struggle, whatever that struggle may be, can achieve and achieve at high levels.
In a letter to parents of the 100,000 plus San Diego Unified students, Marten said she has never been more optimistic about the future of the American education system, and it's the love and support of her hometown that has made all of this possible, saying she is deeply grateful for having been entrusted with the sacred responsibility of educating San Diego children. The Senate will have to take up Marten's confirmation. In the meantime, the Board of Education has named District 2 Area Superintendent Lamont Jackson as her interim replacement. He'll serve through 2021. San Diego Unified did not make Marten available to discuss her nomination today, but she's previously called on the incoming Biden administration to step up.
The federal response to the current education crisis should prioritize low-income students, special education students, and students from military families.
During her annual State of the District message in November, she asked the president-elect to implement changes within the first 100 days. She says the pandemic is disproportionately impacting communities of color, and schools play a role in addressing those disparities.
School counselors, social workers, and other specialized instructional support personnel must be able to address the emotional burdens and the trauma that many students will be carrying. This fact makes additional funding essential.
Marten shared the district's reopening plan that includes regularly testing teachers and staff with Biden's transition team. Part of it also focuses on teachers.
There is a lot of talk in Washington about technology. And while closing the digital divide is important, the way to help our students recover from a year in distance learning is not through more effective distance learning. Our students need their teachers.
Marten also said she wants to see a teacher corps established to help disadvantaged communities and create a plan that allows all 3- and 4-year-olds to access high-quality education. Matt Hoffman, KPBS News.
Vice President-elect Kamala Harris officially resigned from her California Senate seat. She submitted her resignation letter today ahead of Wednesday's inauguration. Harris is making history as the nation's first female, first Black, and first South Asian vice president. She says it was an honor serving California for 4 years in the Senate.
Of course, I'm not saying goodbye. In many ways, I'm now saying hello as your vice president. But I do want to thank you for the honor of representing the place of my birth as a proud daughter of California. Thank you.
Today, Governor Gavin Newsom formally appointed California Secretary of State Alex Padilla to fill Harris's seat, becoming the state's first Latino U.S. Senator. Newsom nominated local Assembly member Dr. Shirley Weber to become the state's first African-American Secretary of State. On a day meant to honor Reverend Martin Luther King Jr.'s fight for freedom and equality, the U.S. Capitol is fortified and on high alert. 21,000 troops now in Washington, D.C. have been screened by the FBI to prevent against any insider threats. Karen Kafa has more.
My father always believed in the people of our nation. Certainly, he would be greatly disappointed in how we have chosen to conduct ourselves at this particular moment.
More than half a century after Martin Luther King Jr. stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and shared his dream for the future, barbed wire and checkpoints barricade the National Mall, while tens of thousands of National Guard troops stand watch.
We are part of the layered defense to ensure that the bubble that will be around the vice president and the vice president-elect and the president-elect, so that we can have a peaceful transfer of power.
But after a violent mob seized the U.S. Capitol, some worry about extremism in the ranks.
There were military people and police who took oaths to defend the Constitution and to protect and defend who didn't do it, who were in the insurrection. So it does concern me.
To alleviate concerns, all National Guard troops deployed to D.C. have to go through additional layers of screening.
So they're screened, and then they're repeatedly screened until they are actually put on the street.
The head of the D.C. National Guard says the vetting process hasn't flagged any issues with incoming troops. Now, as President Trump makes his move out of the White House to Mar-a-Lago, First Lady Melania Trump is saying goodbye.
Be passionate in everything you do, but always remember that violence is never the answer and will never be justified.
In Washington, Karen Kafa, KPBS News.
The region's U.S. attorney and San Diego's top prosecutor are asking for help in identifying violence before the Biden inauguration. Here is KPBS reporter Eric Anderson with more.
The region's top two prosecutors say they will not tolerate election-related violence ahead of and during the president-elect's inauguration. The FBI issued a warning last week that there was a potential for violence in all 50 states. U.S. Attorney Richard Brewer and San Diego District Attorney Summer Stephan say troublemakers will be found and prosecuted.
The potential targets are wide, and we want to make sure that we don't limit ourselves, but at the same time focusing on things that represent democracy, have to be on our mind.
Stephan asked for the public's help in identifying people who may cause trouble. She says public buildings that represent democracy are the most likely targets. Eric Anderson, KPBS News.
Racial justice activists in San Diego are moving to reclaim Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a call for more police accountability. KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser says they want the district attorney to prosecute police officers for past shootings. A warning, this story contains graphic images.
Shot 7 times. Excessive deadly force is not the answer.
Anthony Carolino's brother, Dennis, was shot and killed by San Diego police in 2019. District Attorney Summer Stephan later cleared the officers for the shooting, saying it was justified because Dennis Carolino was armed with a shovel.
We have to correct this mistake in our generation.
Activists say they want Stephan to bring justice to people like the Carolinos who lost family members in police shootings. They're asking the district attorney to revisit past shootings and prosecute the officers. Yusef Miller is with the San Diego Racial Justice Coalition.
There are families in North County, East County, South Bay, Central San Diego, inland and coastal that have experienced the same thing. And all we hear over and over and over, that officers are exonerated.
A spokeswoman for Stephan said in a statement that, quote, officer-involved shooting reviews conducted by the district attorney's office are independent, objective, and thorough. When the evidence and facts support criminal justice charges in a use of force incident, we file them. She pointed out that last summer, Stephan charged a former sheriff's deputy with murder after he shot a suspect who was fleeing the downtown jail. But Darwin Fishman, a professor at San Diego State who is also part of the San Diego Racial Justice Coalition, says that move isn't enough.
If you use that same standard she used, you'd have literally hundreds of officers that would have been prosecuted and arrested. So if it's not a stunt and she was serious about it, then she'd go back and look at these other cases.
A review of past cases is exactly what Fishman and other activists are hoping will happen. Claire Tregeser, KPBS News.
Celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day takes on a different meaning for many this year. In 2020, the U.S. faced racial tensions and saw mass protests. On midday, we heard from Reverend James Lawson Jr., one of the activists who marched alongside Dr. King. He says the Black Lives Matter movement is the continuation of the earlier civil rights movement.
This is the continuing hope that our nation can pay off, fulfill the promissory note of which Dr. King talks.
Reverend Lawson says there were more than 8,000 demonstrations in all 50 states and called it the most nonviolent and diverse campaign the nation has ever seen. California has become the first state to record more than 3 million known coronavirus cases as deaths continue to spike. The state reported 432 deaths on Sunday, a day after recording the second highest daily count of 669. Here in San Diego County, over 2,500 new cases were reported today and no additional deaths. However, a total of 66 deaths were reported over the weekend. And as John Lawrence reports, the U.S. could see the toll rise to 500,000 in about a month.
As the U.S. prepares for a new president to take office with a plan to attack the COVID-19 pandemic, the nation's death toll is nearing the 400,000 mark. The incoming director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says the U.S. has some dark weeks ahead.
By the middle of February, we expect 500,000 deaths
in this country. That doesn't speak to the tens of thousands of people who are living with a yet uncharacterized syndrome after they've recovered.
As vaccines slowly roll out, the U.S. is struggling to get the upper hand on the pandemic, especially in parts of California, where state officials say Los Angeles is the first county in the nation to report more than 1 million cases. Around 14,000 of those have died.
It feels like you're waking up to a nightmare every day. It's hard to imagine that many people passing away, and each one of those is a story. It's a family.
The CDC reports at least 88 cases of a highly contagious coronavirus variant, first identified in the UK, were confirmed in 14 states, and that the country has yet to see the full ramifications of spread caused by holiday travel.
It's going to take weeks, if not months, to do the setup things that are necessary. We're all going to have to be patient. I do think we'll get there, but it's going to be hard.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Santa Ana winds are expected to kick up again, creating dangerous fire conditions amid dried out fuels. The National Weather Service in San Diego has issued a red flag warning starting at 10 o'clock tonight. But the good news is we could get rain this week. Mark Mancuso has your forecast.
Cooler temperatures and wind, the big stories here, and a chance for a little bit of precipitation, perhaps by the middle part of the week. High pressure over the Great Basin, upper low drops down through Southern California. Big pressure difference, and that's giving us all the wind out here. And with the wind increasing, high wind watches and warnings are in effect. Dry conditions in the winds. We have fire weather watches and also red flag warnings. And along the coast, still pretty rough. We do have high surf advisories in effect into Tuesday. Temperature is tonight, low 40s Oceanside, low 50s San Diego. Ramona's in the upper 30s, and El Cajon is at 49. Borrego Springs, 49, and Mountain Lagoon is at 28. Tomorrow, there it is, the upper low drops south, and we'll be looking at strong winds in our area. A little bit of moisture return to our east. Temperatures, cooler. Oceanside, 68, San Diego, 68, Ramona, 63. 50 in Mountain Lagoon and Borrego Springs, right around 70. Now, Wednesday and Thursday, the upper low down to our south will start to move east. I think most of the rain is going to stay south of the border. Highest chances for any showers, probably southern mountains into the lower deserts. Temperature-wise, well, you can see after the cool Tuesday, temperatures rebound some there on Wednesday. Another system approaches for the weekend. That could bring us some more showers. Checking inland, well, it's cooler and it's windy, and then a little bit milder Wednesday and Thursday, and here comes that system for the weekend. Showers could return. And into the mountains, very windy with the cooler air, maybe a little bit wet on Wednesday, and then the next chance for some wet weather comes on Saturday. And in the deserts, well, not as warm Tuesday, and there's maybe a little bit wet Wednesday. Thursday and Friday look nice, and showers coming back over the weekend. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
The life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was celebrated today in the 33rd Annual All Peoples Celebration. Organized by Alliance of San Diego, the event was held virtually for the first time. The keynote speaker was Reverend Dr. Yvette Flunder, who spoke of this year's theme, persistence, and reflected on Dr. King's teachings.
Black bones and white bones. Brown, red, and yellow bones, Protestant and Catholic and Muslim and Mormon and Buddhist and Baha'i bones, straight, gay, trans, and bi bones, Democratic, independent, and yes, Republican bones, bones from every land and every country and every ethnicity and every culture, finding their way to each other and blurring the lines that separate us.
The event, which usually drew more than 1,000 attendees before the pandemic, also had musical performances by the Kumeyaay Bird Singers, the Bangsons, and poetry by Emmy Award-winning poet Boris Blues Rogers. Alliance San Diego is a community empowerment organization to promote justice and social change. MLK Day is also a day of service across the country. Today, staff and volunteers with the Chicano Federation cleaned up and planted a new succulent garden at a senior living facility in City Heights. Volunteers also decorated rocks in the garden with inspiring messages in honor of Dr. King. Park Place Apartments is one of 9 apartment complexes owned and managed by the Chicano Federation through their affordable housing program. It's a question leaders of performing arts organizations the world over have had to answer as a result of this pandemic. How do you keep performing when live performances aren't possible? In our continuing series of pandemic profiles, KPBS reporter John Carroll checks in with the CEO of the San Diego Symphony.
The good old days, before anyone had ever heard the words coronavirus or COVID-19, a time when we could go and hear in person the world-class San Diego Symphony. Then, in March of last year, the live music stopped.
And so what do? You take a deep breath and you start to imagine what life looks like in the next iteration.
For the symphony, the next iteration looked like the next iteration of many arts organizations, moving online to the world of Zoom. That lasted for a couple of months. Then, as we all began to understand more about the virus, the look and sound was refined.
We were actually able to return to live performances, socially distanced, with strings wearing masks.
This is from a performance last November in the Conrad Prebys Performing Arts Center in La Jolla.
And this is the best quality live experience in a natural acoustic with beautiful camera work, bringing you really close to the players in the comfort of your own home. We do some beautiful pieces that often don't make their way to a concert program in our kind of traditional times, but beautiful serenades for strings alone or winds alone.
In 2002, the San Diego Symphony received a $100 million donation from Qualcomm founder Irwin Jacobs and his wife Joan, who, we should note, are also supporters of KPBS. Gilmer says the symphony only draws off the interest of that donation. The principal is left untouched. So keeping the symphony in good financial condition is a never-ending effort. The group's full-time musicians are on reduced hours and reduced pay, but their health benefits haven't been touched. Fortunately, Gilmer says season ticket holders and other donors to the organization have been generous, so the symphony is doing as well as can be expected. Now, the symphony is looking forward with great anticipation to performing again in front of live audiences. The first place we're likely to see that is the new Shell at Embarcadero Marina Park South, a magnificent addition to San Diego's waterfront.
Right now, when you go out there, you'll see that they're putting the inner liner in, covering up all of that technology. So it's not yet available, but it will be, I hope, very soon.
Very soon can't come soon enough for Gilmer.
There is the emotional impact of the pandemic on our musicians and on our staff and on our audience and our entire San Diego Symphony family. One of the things that is most difficult for me is that people really need, at this time more than ever, to be able to be together and to experience music which just, it carries you away. It takes you to another place. And of all times in our history, we need it more now than ever.
John Carroll, KPBS News.
A bobcat found injured and pregnant in Rancho Bernardo has been released back into the wild. It was hit by a car last month and taken to the Humane Society's Wildlife Center in Ramona for treatment. Veterinarians performed an ultrasound and then discovered the bobcat was pregnant and suffering from a fractured jaw. After being nursed back to health, she was released yesterday, not far from where she was found.
I'm Judy Woodruff. Tonight on the NewsHour, tensions remain high nationwide ahead of the presidential transfer of power amid threats of violence. Coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
And here's another look at today's top stories. San Diego County is opening COVID-19 vaccination sites to those aged 75 and older. Public health officers announced the change today because of a slowdown in appointments. The new requirements apply to the Petco Park Superstation and other county-run sites. The county intends to expand vaccines to those 65 and older next week. California state epidemiologist called for a pause on administering a batch of the Moderna vaccine because of allergic reactions. Less than 10 people who got the shots at the Petco Park Superstation needed medical attention. The batch, which includes over 330,000 doses distributed across the state, is on hold until an investigation is completed. And San Diego Unified Superintendent is headed for Washington, D.C. Cindy Marten was nominated by the Biden administration to be the Deputy Secretary of Education. Marten has been an educator for 3 decades and was chosen to lead California's second largest school district in 2013. The Board of Education selected Lamont Jackson as interim superintendent through the end of the year. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Have a great evening.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, proud to support the mission of KPBS and privileged to serve San Diego clients. Anderson Plumbing, Heating and Air, helping homeowners maintain drain, heating, and cooling systems since 1978. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley. And by the following: and by viewers like you. Thank you.